And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week. On this weekend, with Thanksgiving behind us and the Christmas season ahead of us, I hope that all of you had a really wonderful Thanksgiving Day and survived Black Friday. And our friends down in Florida must have been listening last week when we suggested it was time to put an end to the Florida races for the U.S. Senate and for governor. And this week, what happened? Governor Rick Scott became Senator-elect Rick Scott. Bill Nelson finally conceding there in a race that he lost by roughly 12,000 votes. And equally, Ron DeSantis became Governor-elect Ron DeSantis of the state of Florida. Those results were very quietly certified this week without much fanfare at all. Interesting. And at the same time, Brenda Snipes, the election supervisor in Broward County, somewhat quietly resigned. Now, there are a lot of questions surrounding her conduct in office and whether or not the multitudinous breaches of the law, late filings, and found ballots were simply annoying incompetence or something much more. That remains to be seen. But again, these were elections that were not really that close. I mean, 12,000 votes in a state as big as Florida sounds close, but we've never in this country had an election contest where a recount overturned a margin anywhere near that. In fact, we've never had one that got even to 10% of that number. So you look next door to Georgia, and there Stacey Abrams refused to concede, although she said she lost, I don't know what it was, a concession speech, to Republican Brian Kemp by more than 55,000 votes. She claimed, all sorts of irregularities and problems, number one of which was voter suppression. Now, that's a tough argument to make when there were more than 1,300,000 voters more showing up this year than in the previous gubernatorial election, and showing up at a rate almost the same as during the presidential contest of 2 years ago. She then talked about the fact that there were voters purged, but Secretary of State Kemp, who became the gubernatorial candidate for the Republicans, merely was executing a law put into effect by a Democratic legislature, signed into law by a Democratic governor. I mean, it's really incumbent upon those who lose elections to support the process and the integrity of the system and ultimately the legitimacy of elections and of elected officials. Otherwise, quite bluntly, it all falls apart. They say that getting off stage gracefully is the toughest act in life, and I think we saw a little bit of that this week. I know she's running for other office and needed to, gin up her base, et cetera, et cetera. But that kind of rhetoric is really ultimately destructive to our system, which in many respects is a very fragile one, but a very precious one, and certainly better than any other in the rest of the world. And so now we move into 2020 and all sorts of commotion already about who the Democratic nominee will be, whether President Trump will get challenged, et cetera. But I want to focus for just 1 second on the economy, which is going to be at the forefront of the 2020 election. No matter what else occurs, it always is a situation where people vote their pocketbooks. And the markets, and we've cautioned about, stock prices being the determinant of political fortunes. The markets right now are tumbling a little bit. They're saying that we could go another 2,000 points down before the correction is actually made and works out. And there are some economists that are predicting a significant slowdown in the rate of economic growth, down to perhaps 2% next year. Still better than Obama did, but nowhere near what the Trump economy has been doing thus far. So, policies of economic growth are still at the heart of success politically and ultimately what is best for the country, because that rising tide really does lift all boats. And for now, that's the best 60-ish seconds of your week.